have a cousin named Linda. Her mother once made a lot of fun of people who were unlucky enough to be around her. But as you know, there's a price to pay for everything in this world. And now, my aunt is paying the price. Maybe she was cursed, or maybe it's God's punishment, but in addition to stroke and breast cancer, misfortunes are falling on the most precious thing for my aunt, her daughter, my cousin. That's what happened one day. I woke up in the middle of the night. Silence. The flickering light of the TV was hitting my eyes. I must have fallen asleep watching a movie again. Next to me, without taking my hand out of the bowl of popcorn, my sister was barely audible. I was thirsty, and I slid my foot off the couch, but suddenly something made me uncomfortable. When I looked at the entrance to the living room, I didn't see anything unusual, but I felt uneasy. The door to the living room was ajar, revealing a view of the dimly lit hallway. When I turned around, I found that Linda was awake and staring wide-eyed at the doorway. "Oh, what are you doing up?" I asked. "Don't look over there," she whispered. "Why?" "Don't look over there," Linda said. Not understanding, I stared at her. It seemed to me as if she had aged in front of my eyes. In the flickering light of the TV, her face was dead pale. My inner anxiety was growing. I turned to the door again. It was open, must be a draft. As I jerked to get up from the couch, I was pulled backward. Linda grabbed my arm. "Turn around, don't look in there," she yelled. "Linda, what are you doing? You're scaring me." I got scared. Linda pulled my head to her chest and hugged my shoulders tightly. "Don't look, don't look, don't look." My sister's hands were squeezing my shoulders with an unaccustomed strength. It was hard to breathe, and when I managed to turn my head away, I froze. A dark figure stood in the doorway, as if someone or something 2 meters tall had donned a black cloak. The figure did not move. Its silhouette was indistinct and rippled in the air like a concentrated blob of fog. That was all I had time to see before the TV went out with a loud pop. We jumped up and down on the couch with fear and surprise. I started screaming and waving my arms, trying to push away what I had seen. This time Linda grabbed me by the hair and pulled my face into the couch, then lay on top of me with her breasts. In a complete daze, I heard only my sisters panting for a fraction of a second, and then there was dead silence. I don't know how long I didn't find the strength to lift my head until I felt something wet under my palms. "Linda? Can you hear me?" "I'm scared, Linda. Please answer me," I whispered my pleas and realized with horror that my sister wasn't just ignoring me. She had gone limp and wasn't moving. I threw my sister's body off of me. She lay before me unmoving. Her entire face was stained with something, her mouth open, no eyeballs. Just 3 holes, that's the whole face. I burst into hysterics, pulled away from my sister and fell off the couch, losing my balance. Finding myself on my back, I started gasping for breath from the bruise when I saw it again. It was hanging from the ceiling right above me. Now it was just a spot. I thought it hissed. I could even make out words in that hiss. I continued to lie there, gulping air with my mouth like a fish, eyes as wide as I could not repeat now. Something like a tentacle began to descend from the stain toward me, closer and closer to my eyes. It was like it was happening in slow motion. The tentacles had already touched my eyelashes, and then there was a sharp pain, and I woke up. I was lying on the floor, Linda sitting on top of me, pulling me up by my arms. Her face was covered in blood, oozing from a laceration on her cheek below her eye. I was clutching knitting needles, the points of which were pressed into my skin under my eyelids. As Linda explained to me later, she woke up just as I was aiming to stick the needles into her. She ducked in time to avoid losing her eyes, but I scratched her cheek. She managed to throw me off the couch, and then I started eyeballing myself. I only woke up when she pressed her knee hard against my chest, trying to pull my hands away from my face. This had happened to Linda before. It was also the night her boyfriend, while in a dream, tried to break her fingers with a hammer. Then he too had dreamed of a shadow and Linda with no hands. Like this time, Linda woke up in time. We're starting to think it's a curse, But what if next time Linda doesn't wake up on time? The loss of a loved one is very difficult. It seems that the ground is falling away from under your feet, and your heart is torn apart by pain and longing. You constantly think about the deceased, remember him, and do not want to let him go. It seems that some time will pass, and everything that happened will disappear like a terrible dream, and he will return. But even the church advises to be careful what you wish for. When we kill for the deceased and beg him to come back, we can't even guess what this meeting will bring us. So, when seeing my wife off to her last journey, I didn't think about it at all. Then, standing in the cemetery, in front of the gaping black grave, I repeated like a robot, "I cannot live without you. I want you to come back to me so badly." Before my Sandy died, I bought her a new wedding ring for her wedding anniversary to replace the old one I had lost. But it turned out I didn't have time to give it to her. And on the day of the funeral, I put it on her cold finger with the words, "I'll always be yours." I sincerely believed that we would meet her in heaven and at least there, but find eternal happiness. But what a fool I was. It all started on the 40th day after her funeral. I got really drunk that day, remembering Sandy. After seeing my family and friends off, I fell asleep on the couch and passed out. I woke up only when I heard the sound of water in the bathroom in the middle of the night. My first thought, of course, was that perhaps one of my relatives had stayed overnight, and I had not remembered it. But I was so lazy to get up that I just rolled over to the other side and fell into sleep again. And in the morning, a terrible surprise awaited me in the bathroom. The whole bathroom was covered with vapor, as if someone washed there in hot water. But the worst thing I saw on the mirror, someone had carefully written, "Good morning, my love," on it with a finger. I raced around the apartment in a frenzy, hoping to find the Joker. But I was incredibly disappointed because I was all alone in the apartment. Deciding that the funny man had already left my house, I began to think about who, among my friends or relatives, might have known about Sandy and I's little secret. Because she was the one who got up before me in the mornings and took the bath, and when it was my turn to take my morning routine, I would find this very inscription on the mirror. But no one could know. First of all, it was a minor prank that I didn't need to tell anyone about. And secondly, there was no second I was sure of it. But then maybe I'd just drunkenly imagined the whole thing. I went back to the bathroom, which had already cooled down. I closed the door behind me and turned on the hot water at full blast. And I could not take my eyes off the mirrored surface and could not believe what was happening. The same inscription was still there. My other assumption was that the mirror hadn't been cleaned since Sandy was gone, and it's probably still holding her fingerprints. No. Sometimes when I showered, I'd wipe it down myself. After I'd exhausted my arguments, I just got drunk again. But the next night, and the night after that, the sound of water came to me at night, and in the morning, it was the same again. And then, one day I couldn't stand it any longer and crept quietly to the bathtub. Not daring to enter at once, I knocked gently and listened. Behind the door, I heard a fuss and the sound of the faucet closing, and then silence. An eerie, oppressive silence that cut into my temples. I yanked the handle on the door, but the bathroom was empty. Only the faint odor of decay lingered in the air. From that night on, I was truly afraid. I didn't sleep anymore, but listened to the sounds all the time. And then one day, the sound of the water in the bathroom stopped, and I heard the door open, and then I heard footsteps. Like someone with wet feet slapping on the parquet floor coming towards me. 1 second. A second. I squeezed my eyes shut, afraid to move, and then a familiar voice called out to me in the silence. I opened my eyes, and in the dim light of the night lamp, I saw her. She was standing with her back to me, in some obscure hoodie, and I knew for sure. Oh, I was just sure she was smiling at that moment, because her body was twitching with laughter, and her shoulders were heaving up and down. "Honey, is that you?" I said, with parched lips, and reached out trying to grab her hand. And then she slowly, very slowly, turned toward me, and I heard her teeth grinding. What I saw in that moment made me want to scream. But her empty eye sockets, filled with wriggling worms, seemed to look into my soul and cut off my oxygen. I couldn't breathe for a long time, but when she came closer, I immediately smelled her repulsive odor, the odor of rotting flesh, which pierced my nose, making me sob. And then she held out her hand to me, and I saw the ring. The very ring I personally put on her the day of the funeral. "Are we together, honey, forever?" she asked. Scared to death, I nodded, and then she kissed me. And in the morning, I woke up not myself. My whole body was tearing up inside, and it burned like hell. When I threw back the blanket, I was amazed. From the tips of my toes to my throat, I was covered with strange sores, which at first glance looked very old. From that moment on, I had a strong desire to live. I ran around to many doctors, but they gave me the disappointing diagnosis of leishmaniasis. But how? How? I asked. But the doctors were just throwing up their hands. I could not suffer from this disease in principle because I have never been to the countries of the near abroad and various tropics. And there are no such people in my neighborhood either. So the only other possibility is Sandy. She comes to me every night and demands to be with her. And if it weren't for this weird illness, I could swear I was going crazy. But I'm fine with him. I'm just rotting really hard and alive. Almost every other day I have dreams. Different ones, colorful, bright, dim, meaningful, meaningless. But I never have the same dream 2 days in a row. And this summer I have a dream. I'm running on the subway, and behind me a man in black. I cannot see his face, but I know for sure that he is chasing me with some not very good purpose. And it's rush hour in the subway. I'm pushing through people, asking someone to help me, but they don't see this person and don't understand what I'm asking from everyone. Inside me, a wild animal fear. I have such a dream 3 nights in a row. On the 4th night, again. I drank sleeping pills at night. I thought that overwork sleep is not deep. So nightmares torment me and fell asleep. I can't see his face. I'm running on the subway. He catches up with me and he has a knife in his hand. He grabs my hands. I try to get away. I scream in a bad voice. My head is spinning with fear. And he stabs my face just above my eyebrow. I scream in terrible pain. And I am finally woken up by my boyfriend. I'm screaming all over the apartment. I wake up, push him away, turn on the light in the room, look in the mirror, and I have a cut above my eyebrow. And it's bleeding. What the hell is that? The guy's shocked. I almost went crazy. I didn't go to sleep that night. The next morning I didn't go to work and ran to church. They told me to say a prayer at home. I don't really believe in it, but I had to do it out of fear. This man doesn't come in my dreams anymore, but I still have a scar on my face, above my right eyebrow,